everywhere you go, go with intention. And every time you're presented with a choice, take that breath, slow down, breathe. Is this aligned with my intention? Is this aligned with my vision? Is this aligned with my purpose? Is this aligned with my highest self? And make that decision and choice based on that. Take the moment to really get centered in that. Because the world right now, our planet, our communities, we don't have any more time to waste. The reason why we are here and being gifted all of this is because the world right now needs leaders. The world needs leaders. You are those leaders. But who are you? Who you be when no one is looking, when the cameras are off, when you're not in the villa in the middle of the jungle? Who you be every day, how you be every day when you wake up, the intentions you set, how you align every day, again, to that purpose, to that vision, to that courage. That is what's going to make the biggest difference. That is going to make the ripple effect that will save our world. And humanity right now is the real pandemic, as we know, is not the disease of some kind of sickness. I know COVID is very real and hearts to everyone who has faced that. But the real pandemic and epidemic is fucking fear. We are going through a true spiritual war right now. So every single one of you, in your businesses, in your family, in your daily life, those decisions that you will make are what's going to be the difference between if we have the children of tomorrow grow up in a world that is filled with the joy, the peace, the happiness that we instilled in those children today. And as we all learned, we are the new ancestors. How were our great-grandkids say we lived? What a gift that we got to all step into that Temescal. And think about the 7 generations that will come after us. 7 generations. What will that do? Think about the last 7 generations that did their part to get us here right now. So are we going to honor them? Are we going to lead? Are we going to pay attention? Because what I do know is this: when we go back out there, you will be tested. You will be tested in 90 seconds from the moment you walk out of here. You will be tested. And you will be presented with choices. And those ancestors, God, Jesus, universe, are going to present those choices to you to see how ready you are for the next level of true abundance, freedom, prosperity. Who will you be when those choices are presented to you? It's so easy to quickly react through life. Stimulated. We live in a stimulated world. Well, real power is when you can, in all situations, in those hardships, center yourself. Is this aligned to my higher purpose? Is this aligned to my vision? Is this aligned to what I stand for?
Okay, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the One Shot Movement podcast, where we dive deep into the stories of entrepreneurs, business people, anyone that's out there making it happen. And I've been running a very special series called Navigating the Fog to Thrive on the Other Side. Over the last 2 years, I wanted to run this special series to help people understand what's going on in the world right now, but then as we move through, thrive on the other side. And one of my favorite entrepreneurs on the planet, I've worked closely with him in one of his containers, is Gerard Adams. And we actually did do an episode a long time ago, and I thought to myself, look, this guy here can really add some massive value in this Thrive on the Other Side. So I want to welcome Gerard Adams to the show, but just a quick snapshot. He's built a business that he sold for $50 million, 2 8-figure businesses, and then he's moved into this real conscious leader mastermind space where he's got a Leaders Create Leaders brand and now a Leaders Create Leaders mastermind, which I was a part of his very first container there. So welcome to the show, Gerard.
It's an honor to be back, Craig. What is up, One Shot Tribe?
Yeah, look, I mean, I would love to invite you just to share a bit of that. And I just mentioned that Gerard has told his story in our first episode, and it's such a powerful story. And I invite you to go back to that episode. So, Gerard, do you want to just pick up the story from, I guess, Leaders Create Leaders into where you are right now?
Shout out to every one of you that heard our last podcast that we did together, because I shared parts of my story that I have never shared before. And many of you can remember in that podcast, I share about the last 8-figure company that I built and sold to a $1 billion organization, 200 employees. And I thought that was going to be it for me. Like, I thought that highlight for any entrepreneur is like, man, one day can my company get sold? And all of a sudden I have all the money, I have all the time, and like everything is exactly how I always dreamed it to be. And the truth is, when I sold my company, I actually was pretty depressed. I thought I sold too early, and I went on a soul quest. And on that quest, the first thing was that I was like, oh, okay, like this aspect of purpose. Like, what is my purpose, and how can I be more of service? And so I thought that this lack of fulfillment that I was feeling would be filled by me just being of service. And so I went into an inner city and built an incubator and started serving that inner city. I built an accelerator. I built my Leaders Create Leaders mastermind. I started interviewing some of the greatest leaders on the planet with the show. And I was just continuing to go and serve. And what I realized was I was still operating from this like hustle mentality that I had in my career. And although I was being of service and I felt like I was aligned to my purpose, helping others, I truly still felt this void, and I couldn't figure out what it was. I just thought that, okay, if I go out there and I build my next company and I'm doing good in the world, that it would fill that void. But really what it was the fact that I wasn't connecting to my spirituality. I wasn't connecting to who am I beyond all the labels. And so if you're listening to this right now, a lot of your worth for many of your years, if you're anyone like me, comes from your achievements, how much money you've made, how many exits you've had, how many maybe followers, how many trophies, how many awards, how many articles, and just all of these external validators. But the truth is, if we were to remove all of that, who are you? Beyond all of those titles, beyond all those achievements, beyond all those labels. And I was sitting there asking myself, who am I? And I started really going on this journey of thinking about legacy. And on that journey, I had a friend who came to me and was like, hey, G, do you want to come and meet with my shaman? I'm like, what the hell is a shaman? I never knew of plant medicine or ayahuasca or anything beyond me taking MDMA at the club. And so I decided to lean in because it was scary. It was uncertain. It was uncomfortable. And plant medicine became this huge teacher in my life that allowed me to connect to God like I've never connected to before. It allowed me to connect to self-love, like really feel love for myself, because I was all about giving to everyone around me, but I didn't know how to give it to myself. I didn't know how to love myself. I didn't know how to give grace to myself. I didn't even know how to be proud of myself. I mean, I sold a company and I felt like, well, maybe I got lucky. Like I didn't even feel worthy enough to have the millions of dollars that were sent to me. So there was some deep things that were internal that I didn't understand where it came from. And for many of you listening to this, there's wounds that you have. There's trauma that you have there's beliefs that you have, there's conditioning and programming that's in your unconscious mind, in your unconscious spirit, that potentially was even passed down to you. Like, some of it is because of the things that you've gone through in your own childhood and over your life. Some of it has actually been passed down from your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your ancestors that you may not even know. And so I feel like we have this divine plan that is meant for each and every one of us, that is an opportunity to heal these wounds that we inherit and that we create in our lives, and turn it into wisdom, and use that wisdom to then align more to our truth, and align more to God, and align more to our faith, align more to our courage, align more to our connection to spirit, and truly live in alignment to that legacy now. And for me, when I started to bring spirituality to the forefront and operate from that new lens as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as a business owner, as a now becoming a father, going through my initiation into fatherhood through the lens of consciousness, through the lens of spirituality, in the way that I operate in the world with my family, my friends, and most importantly, with the decisions that we make every day, not just the big decisions, but the micro decisions every day, and being able to make those micro decisions truly in an alignment to your truth and to what you stand for in the world and to your spirit when nobody's looking. And a lot of times we don't realize, but those little micro decisions that we make every single day, when the camera's not on, when your kids are paying attention, when you're not on the live stream, when you're not in the boardroom, those decisions when nobody else is around, and only you know if you're making that decision in alignment with your integrity. And those decisions create a ripple effect. And I believe that that is what allows us to maximize our one shot at living a fulfilled, prosperous, and reach our full potential on this planet, and not only live a legacy for ourselves, but play a much bigger game and play to the legacy of the collective on this planet.
Yeah, powerful. And I as I mentioned, I've joined your Leaders Create Leaders mastermind because I wanted to do some more inner work on myself, and it was a very profound experience for me. I was the only Australian in the group with 20 to 30 phenomenal people that from all walks of life and careers and professions, and we caught up on a weekly basis, and it was some really deep conversation there. And there was a couple of things, because I shared, we got really vulnerable in your container, and we opened our hearts. And one thing that I shared in the container, I want you to just talk about what that is all about, but I shared about being locked down and being locked in a 5K radius. And, I could see everyone traveling to Mexico, and I was sort of missing out on all these exciting adventures that everyone was doing. And I just shared one day, one story was, I've traveled all around the world, 20 weeks a year, 120 different cities. I love treating the world my oyster, but I've been controlled into feeling like a bird in a bird cage, where I can't leave 5 kilometers, 3 miles from my house. You said one thing to me that really hit home. There's actually two things that really, really hit home. And you shared a story which brought some perspective, and it was about your friend that made a bad decision and ended up in prison for that decision. And, his life was, in a 3x3 like that. And, and the other thing you really hit me with was going back to your inner child and doing things that you love to do. So I started climbing trees with my son, because he was really interested in climbing trees, chopping wood and lighting fires overnight, because that's what I did with my dad when I was little. I bought a mountain bike and started mountain biking down hills. Do you want to talk about what you try and generate in your Leaders Create Leaders mastermind? And, if you want to add anything into what I just said, the floor is yours.
Well, I just want to honor you for stepping into that container in our mastermind during one of the most challenging points in your life, being in lockdown. I remember that story of my brother Garen Jones, and a lot of times as we're going through these lockdowns, we talked about the prison, right? And how the real prison, even when he was literally in prison, like in confinement, he realized, just like Nelson Mandela, that no one can truly imprison you other than you imprisoning yourself through your mind. And how can you look at this as a gift? And I just love the fact that you leaned in and changed your perspective of feeling locked down, imprisoned, like all of a sudden now, almost as if your freedom was taken away. And you changed that story and turned it in from a disempowering story, took responsibility and turned it into an empowering story. And not only created a deeper relationship with your family as a father, what a role model you are for those kids during one of the hardest times. They have to see their dad become even more empowered and empower them. But you also got to connect to, you talked about the inner child. And I think some of the most powerful work that we can do that I didn't even realize is connect to that little boy or that little girl. And when I connected to little Gerard, there was a lot of anger. There was a lot of rage. There was a lot of unprocessed feelings, because especially as a man, we're not taught to feel. We're not taught to understand how to deal with our emotions. We stuff them. We're taught that if we cry, we're weak. And we don't realize that vulnerability is a strength. And so as you get older, when you're able to kind of reconnect to that little boy or little girl, you're giving permission for that little boy to process emotions that they haven't had an opportunity to deal with, which is really powerful, because think about how many years that's been in the body. I mean, that's ultimately what can become cancer. That's what can become sickness. That's what can become limiting factors to your abundance and prosperity. And can, for me, even had played a role in not only just anger and rage and how I was showing up, stuffing that, but then all of a sudden I would blow up with anger and punch a hole through my wall, or throw something, or yell in my relationships, and how I would take that out and bring that energy into my leadership meetings. And they would feel that as me being the leader. They would feel my energy, feeling like all of a sudden, that they were going to disappoint me, or I'm going to get pissed off, right? Like they don't want to disappoint me. And so that energy was affecting, and what you don't realize is that energy could be affecting your relationships and in how you lead. And it was affecting me. And then when I started to connect with that little boy and gave him permission to cry, give him permission to let out the anger and forgive myself, go through the forgiveness, it opened me up to being able to now bring a more authentic version of me into my daily life and into my business. And for me, it also helped me to heal things that I didn't know were present. For me specifically, for instance, scarcity. Our relationship to scarcity, which is another thing we work on in the mastermind, because we believe that there's an opportunity for every person to tap into a more abundant life. And what does abundance really look like? And not controlled abundance, because I thought I had abundance because I had the money and the house and all this stuff. I'm talking about like limitless abundance, like things effortlessly come to you. You have so many options because of how abundant you are, and you're radically generous with everyone, with your team, with your equity, with strangers, with your family. You're so generous. You embody abundance. And for me, it took me a lot to get to this place of like radical generosity and abundance, because my inner child was actually in scarcity because of what he went through. I mean, I saw my parents argue growing up around my mom spending too much money on the credit card. And I was told by my parents, how many of us have had parents or grandparents or people in our lives that have said, don't trust anyone. Like they created this, they conditioned me to feel like I can't trust anyone. And so I looked at the timeline from 10 years old when I hearing that from my parents. My bike got stolen. I loved bike riding as a kid. My favorite thing got stolen. I never processed a bike being stolen when I was a 10-year-old little kid. And then I made a timeline from 10 years old to 37 years old, and how much of certain instances from when I was a kid, which I can talk, I mean, there's more, but I won't keep going, but how that all rippled in how I made decisions and how it led me to manifesting just a lot of scarcity in my life. And although I still achieved a lot of things, deep down, I still wasn't fully accessing my potential of abundance and prosperity. And so like, when I tell you that if you connect to that little boy or little girl, and it's a long journey. It's not a one shot, thing. I have a ceremony I take my clients through, but when you start to do that, you access and you heal things that will create so much, even for you. I can imagine the amount of joy that it created for you riding that mountain bike and making those fires. So like, what is that worth when we think about our joy, when we think about new levels of authenticity and self-expression, because we healed those parts of us, when we all of a sudden now are more abundant and generous and just simply happier. And so like the access point to that is connecting to our inner child. And so it's really powerful way to become a greater leader. And because when we think about a leader, a lot of times we think it's just business. It's not. You're a father. I'm a father now, right? Like, how are we leading in our homes, in our friend? I changed the way I show up for my friends. I changed the way that now I show up for my clients, my friends, my team, everyone.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you just mentioned there, like you talk about emotion and crying, I won't sort of go too much into it, but I cried for the first time in, the story of Ethan. I've shared that story in the group before, but for the first time I cried my heart out was watching my wife have to deliver Ethan, and so much of my life changed in that space of 48 hours. I felt like, I really connected to my emotions. But one thing that's happened to me over the last 2 years, and I'd love you to talk to it through practical experience. I built January 2020, the 1st of January, I announced I've just launched a book. I've just got a podcast interviewing all these phenomenal people in the world, One Shot Movement brand. I'm going to speak out about this all around the world. I'm going to inspire and I'm going to educate. And we got hit with, the global, whatever you want to call it. And I got to May that year, and I never in my entire life, 20 years in business, I said, don't ever speak about anything controversial online, because you're going to lose customers, you're going to lose business, you're going to lose. And I said to myself, I was looking at my 2 children, I said, I know what's going on here. I'm not happy with it. I need to speak my truth, because if my kids say to me in 20 years' time, Dad, what did you do in 2020 when this takeover was happening? And if I had to live with the response, well, I wrote it out, I didn't do anything. So I made a decision. I drew a line in the sand. I went bang, went out public, went out online. I copped ridicule. I copped all sorts of stuff. But I look at my brand has elevated and amplified, and I rid so much superficial people in my life. I elevated so much more respect. People come to me on a daily basis and say, Craig, I follow everything you say. Craig, I'm doing interviews with people like Mickey Willis, David Martin. I've got all these phenomenal people that have joined my show where I'm getting 30,000, downloads, and then 100 testimonials on the back of it. And I've got opportunities coming out all over the place at the moment because I chose to speak my truth. So I look at my brand now as a creator, an educator, inspirer, but I have this line in the sand component where, are you going to cross the line in the sand so I can help carry you forward? What would you say about importance of speaking truth? Importance, because I saw a post, you wrote about Kyrie Irving, and that really hit home to me. I said, Gerard, he's sort of drawn a line in the sand and sort of declared where he is right now. That was just me sitting back. I didn't reach out to you about that. But what do you think about what I just said there?
Well, I again just honor you. It's the reason why I'm on this show, and it's the reason why I'm sure all of your listeners right now respect you. And when we think about leadership and conscious leadership, there's a deep responsibility that we have to be willing to not be liked and stand for truth, and to be willing to even fuck up. I fucked up during the Black Lives Matter movement when it first started. I was like, all lives matter. And then it was like, my freaking audience was like, gee. And I had a lot of my African-American community be like, yo, that's not cool. And I had to even reframe
and be like, oh, okay, and like apologize. And then I went on and did a live stream every day with an African American and someone that from the Black community and men and women of color every day for like I think it was almost, it might have been 10 months, every single day, to learn, just to be curious. And so we have a responsibility to take ownership when we make mistakes, but we also take to be bold and to speak our truth no matter what. And that's not an easy thing to do, but that's going to set you apart. It's going to allow the real people that resonate with you to find you, to discover you. You give people that are afraid a voice, and then you can create real influence from that, real connection, real respect from that. And I'd rather die a man of truth, authenticity, being bold and not liked, than to be the biggest influencer in the world, but be following a narrative that ultimately is keeping me safe and is just a mask to be liked by the masses. And you know, I just know that it's not easy, but we right now more than ever before, we need leaders that are willing to not, especially because the media is so controlled, to speak up and speak out and stand for something. If you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing. And for me, I lost brand deals. I lost followers. I lost friends. I lost people that I really respect that were reaching out to me, that were trying to convince me otherwise around certain narratives, especially around the vaccine. And it was tough for me, but it felt like I rose, similar to you, I elevated. And for me, what's the most important thing that we can do is to be in integrity with ourselves, period. And there's going to be people that just won't like you. People didn't like Mother Teresa. People didn't like Jesus Christ. People didn't like Martin Luther King. People didn't like all of the great leaders in history. People didn't like Steve Jobs. People didn't like, I can keep going. And at the end of the day, we're not here meant to just be liked. We're here to stand for something, stand for truth, stand for what is actually going to make the world a better place, what is good for humanity. And and it's okay also to say that you don't know. A leader doesn't always mean that you speak out. A great leader means that you also listen. It also means listening. It also means saying, I don't really know, and not saying anything, and taking your time and doing your own research. And that's something that I've had to learn too, is like, sometimes it's not always the best to speak out. Sometimes it's best to sit back and listen. Sometimes it's meant to like get curious. And one of the biggest things that I've noticed, and my brother Aubrey has created something called United Polarity. It's about like, can you be neutral? Can you also just be someone who you're able to speak your truth, but also honor someone for theirs, even though it may not agree with you, and just honor them for that and get curious, and don't try to force anything or make them wrong, but just being able to just listen, get curious, be neutral, but also stand for what is an integrity for you.
Absolutely, well said. And I just want to move on to another person that was in your mastermind, Jay Shetty. And I've actually told you before, I actually write this every year. I used to write a tribute to my son. And that was the lesson that I learned the year before, and how I can help impact people to take a lesson from my lesson. And one of the stories in my book was about love and the word love. And in this world, there's fear and hate and segregation and all of these things that are perpetrated down through the media and different groups. And, you sort of just touched a little bit on that then at the moment, but there's this power of love and human connection. And you had a really profound conversation with Jay Shetty in one of your Leaders Create Leaders shows. Can you probably shine some light on love? Because for me, it was just such a powerful conversation that you had. And I think the audience moving forward into thriving on the other side could take some profound wisdom from that.
Wow. That interview is one of the greatest interviews I've ever had. And Jay Shetty is such a generous, kind man. I mean, I know his influence is through the roof, and you know, it's can be intimidating because he's a superstar, and I could tell you that he's one of the kindest, generous, loving human beings. He when he did that interview, I mean, he gave me as much time as we needed. It was so powerful. And, you know, I think a lot of people don't realize how many conditions they have when they say, I love you. And what I realized about love is that it truly is unconditional. And a lot of times we say unconditional love, but love itself at its core is unconditional. And it's able to see the human spirit in someone, and being able to even see the human spirit in yourself, and just realize that every single person is doing the best they can with what they know, with where they're at, and being able to just simply see the human spirit in them and to love them for themselves. And really, it all starts with us. It all starts with us. It's like, you know, when, you know, that saying, it's like hurt people hurt people. One of the greatest gifts that we can give to humanity is to love ourselves, is to go through each day and say, what would someone who loved themselves do in this situation? And if we can all just, when I went to Mother Teresa's home and I was doing philanthropy in Peru, you know, she said that. She said, could you just give an act of love every day, even if it's a small act of love every day to someone, and what that would create in the world and the ripple effect that would have. And so, you know, it's just being a person that sees the human spirit and being unconditional. And, you know, it's interesting because we're not taught this, and it's the craziest thing. It's the greatest gift that God gives us is to love and to be loved, yet we're not taught. You know, it was crazy. I look back now that I've read the 5 love languages. I'm like, man, if I would have known that, all the relationships I would have saved, to understand that there's even some people want to be physically touched. Some people want to have words of affirmation. Some people like acts of service or gifts, you know, and there's so many different ways to love someone. And so what I would suggest is, like, get to know yourself. How do you like to be loved? And then also get to know the people around you and how do they like to embrace love. Maybe they need words of affirmations. Maybe they need you to give them a hug. Maybe they want to know that, you know, you care about them. And maybe they want an act of service, or surprise them with a handwritten letter or a gift in the mail. And if you can just start to live your life from that place, and just love yourself a little bit more and give a love a little bit more every day, you're just going to create more of that in your life. And I think love is the greatest gift that we have. And I'm doing the best I can. I can't remember Jay Shetty's exact advice on it, but I would highly recommend to check out the interview to hear his take.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'll definitely direct people to that, because it was such a profound conversation, and it resonated with me to write about it in my tribute to my son. So that was the impact for me in that year. I want to talk about thriving on the other side. And you created a recent, I don't know if you call it a documentary, but it was called We Are the New Ancestors. And I see this thriving on the other side, this thought leadership, this Gerard Adamses or myself or other people that are trying to uplift humanity and connect people. And you just recently released this, and, you know, I watched it and it touched my heart, because I saw so many people. You did a lot of footage of the retreat that I wasn't able to go on, and I could see all the people there, and yours. You know, what you said at the start in that underground cave, I was emotional about that. Do you want to talk to the audience about, the documentary, but why We Are the New Ancestors?
Yeah. Oh, wow. And I feel so honored that you took the time to watch it. And so thank you so much. And essentially it was the prologue to a film that I'm creating along with a book on ancestral leadership and how to turn our wounds into wisdom and create a meaningful legacy. And that prologue was a 44-minute mini documentary, essentially, that came together simply because one of my lead directors was like, gee, I gotta film you, because typically I don't let people behind the scenes to film my events. They're very exclusive. For my mastermind is not something where I have thousands of people. It's very exclusive. It's application based. I curate and speak to each member, and it's only for 33 individuals that are able to come into this particular mastermind and retreat. And so it was very exclusive. And yet I said, all right, like, I trust you. And he really was able to capture the behind the scenes of this essence that has been coming through that literally isn't mine. It's like, I feel like I'm just a vessel. And sometimes I just ask God, like, what do you know, how can I be of service? Like, what story, what message do you need me to share? And I went through a plant medicine. I always go through a plant medicine ceremony before my retreats to just connect to the divine and ask God, what do you want me to share? Like, what's the curriculum that you have for me? And completely surrender to God's curriculum. And in that curriculum, he was like, this idea of this, we are the new ancestors. And the whole ancestral leadership came through, and it was just allowing everybody to realize that we have this divine plan and soul contract, and it's only yours, and it's been handed down to you. Each and every one of us is a torch bearer. And what we do during that little dash on your tombstone, the day you were born and the day you die, and there's a dash, and what you can do in that dash is so important to your lineage. What are the seeds that you will plant for what we call the 7th generation principle? There was 7 generations before you that had a vision of who you are today. Someone in my lineage 7 generations ago dreamed of the day that I was born, that I would create the next evolution of my lineage. And now I'm creating wealth in my family. I'm creating freedom in my family. My family came from farms in Italy and Colombia and lived in scarcity and had to overcome tons of adversity. My grandfather was in World War II. So my family had to go through serious wars and depressions and overcome tons of adversity and then envision one day me being where I'm at today and my daughter being born and being able to now have this abundance. And so 7 generations ago, someone envisioned who you are. And now you get to now be the visionary of what you will create for the next 7 generations through your children and your children's children. And it allows us to start to think through the lens of a grandfather, to think through the lens of a grandmother, to actually make decisions every single day from that place and realizing the impact that we have for that lineage and the legacy that we get to create for your last name, for your lineage, not just for your family, but again, how you get to play a role in the freaking lineage of humanity. Like, that's huge. We're seeing a major shift in the world right now. The old systems are dying. We're in an epoch. An epoch is every 412 years where there's a major shift in the world, and old systems are dying. The Federal Reserve was created in the last epoch, and now by 2027 going to see we're already seeing it, right? Like, everything's changing. It's the reason why you were in lockdown. It's the reason why cryptocurrency and why NFTs and why blockchain and the Web 3.0 and why all of these things are happening is because the old systems don't work anymore. And as these old systems die, there's a new paradigm of the way that the world will be, in the way we do business, in the way that we live, in the way that we commute. Like, everything is going to change. And so in that new way, in that new paradigm, those that actually step into playing at the level of consciousness that is thinking about the next 7 generations and for what is best for humanity and what in ways that we can actually accelerate and evolve our lineage to a new level of prosperity and what wealth means and what love means and abundance means, those are the ones that are going to be able to create a real lasting legacy, in my opinion. And on top of the fact that we are in a $30 trillion shift of wealth during this decade. And so there's a real opportunity here to create the biggest shift, not only in humanity, but in your lineage. Like a real, you can be a point in your lineage that things were never the same. That like in future generations, things were never the same. They lived in such harmony and abundance, and they didn't have to carry the wounds and trauma of the past. Like my daughter now will be able to look at those, look at what our lineage has had to go through and have reverence for what we've overcome, but not ever have to carry the pain that I have had to endure, my grandparents have had to endure, my great-grandparents have had to endure. And now she can now come into this world with this level of consciousness from the moment she's born, not have to wait to heal when she's in her 30s or 40s, but like be like born into that world. And yeah, that's just, I'm just excited about that. And so every one of us, we are the new ancestors. We are the ones that are planting those seeds for future generations. And so our work in the mastermind is allowing you to tap more into a meaningful legacy. It's allowing you to step more into that legacy, but also you as a leader in the world, a global leader, a game-changing leader, a world-shifting leader. And in that we support your leadership in the ways that you get to build your business from a 6 figures to 7 figures to an 8 figures, and grow in your business and in your being.
Well said. And just on that $30 trillion industry, for me, I've been investing in cryptocurrencies since 2017 and so on. And I've always looked at innovation and world's best practice and what's next, and tried to jump into the fog of it all as it grows and evolves like that. But I do have a slight concern when I look at some of this whole metaverse type of concept, this Web 3.0 concept, that some of the things that are evolving are nearly anti-human. And you can start to see people disconnect from reality and create a reality or an avatar nearly, and live as an avatar and not as a human. Do you see that as a potential risk to, this new generation of tech and innovation and so on? Because, there's people now, buying parts of Times Square and their own islands and, working 8 hours a day and then becoming this, person in this crazy reality. What do you see with that? Do you see that as a risk? So I know that you're very much into human connection and love and that as well.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. I feel that first and foremost, I feel like there's nothing stopping it, right? Like it's here and it's happening. Just like how the printing press became television, and then the movie industry was born, and then we had Web 1.0 with the internet and bloggers, and then Web 2.0 with now Instagram and Facebook and all the social media apps, and now it's Web 3.0, and like this new economy that is being born, this new way of communicating and and creating essentially is here to stay. And so this is just a moment in time that we will remember forever, where literally people are going to start to value their avatar and their virtual life more than their actual physical life. And so there's no, like, in my opinion, right or wrong about this. It's just what is. And essentially, if we can look at it like that in a neutral way and understand that there's always going to be light and dark. And so it comes back to the individual and the intention. And that's why it's so important for us as parents and as the new ancestors to be teaching, by embodying it ourselves, how do we embrace technology in a way that is still in alignment for what is in the greater good of humanity? How can we use these as tools essentially to progress us and to create more connection and more love and more prosperity, and not destruction, not more fear and disconnection, but more love and connection? And that's not going to, like anything, I think there's going to be a really tough period of time that we're about to go through. And there's going to be, I believe, more separation than ever before. and there's going to be people who fight what's happening, and there's going to be people that use it for greed and use it for more disconnection, and that will continue to be the case for sure. And for me, I feel like it's always comes down to like where energy goes, energy flows, and what we resist persists. And so for us as leaders, it's so important for us to be having these conversations. Thank you for bringing this stuff up. And it's important for us to continue to do this inner work and to speak about the importance of emotional intelligence and consciousness, and how do we use technology to create more connection and to create more prosperity in the world, because there's a lot of good, right? Like at the end of the day, like there's a ton of like ways that like let's just be honest, right? Like the old systems aren't working. Look at what has happened already. So how can we now flip the script and actually create a more empowering lens and perspective on how this could be a huge way for us to create even more connection with each other. And again, we can't get, of course, I personally don't want to raise my kid in a VR world all day long. Like I don't want my kids to be stuck on this nonstop. At the end of the day, though, I do want to not resist what is happening, and I want my kids to be able to leverage it as a tool for them to actually create more, just activate even more of their own intelligence and creativity. Really, how can they use it to be more creative? And the ones that lean into that, you know, there's going to be a huge opportunity to create massive amounts of innovation, disruption, wealth in this category. And then it's about what can we do with that wealth? Like, how do we then activate that for more social impact in the world? You know, saving the rainforest and solving real world problems like pollution and poverty and education and reforming media. How can we use this blockchain technology as a way to rid all of the fucked up systems that are programming our children and that are controlling the monetary system and that are educating us based on things that no longer are tapping into our potential? How can we use all of these and use this technology to build the systems that are going to allow us to take back our sovereignty and our freedom? And that's the side of the coin that I'm playing on, and that's the invitation that I have for any leader that resonates with to come on this journey with us.
Well said. I've got a couple of questions just to close out. One is, you're any second now just about to become, well, you know, Ashley and yourself and your beautiful daughter. I actually follow you obviously online because we're connected through social media and what we've done together, but you proposed in Santorini. I proposed in Santorini. You're having a girl. I've had a girl. My son was born on the 16th of February. So, you know, that's so, you know, to timestamp that, we're sort of around that time right now. So what does being a father mean to you?
What a father means to me is to be the example of what a man I feel like it's a father gets to be the representation of the man that my daughter one day will marry. It's an example of a real man, a man of compassion, a man of grace, a man of strength, a man of courage, a protector, a rock, and someone who will do anything and everything to provide and to support my daughter becoming the most beautiful, best version of who she gets to be in this world, and to just support her on her journey. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think what you just said there about, being that person you would want your daughter to marry one day herself is like pretty much sums it up perfectly. If you can be that person, because they'll go on their journey together, and if you've been the shining light, and she gets to marry the shining light, she's going to be safe forever. So I think that was very well put. And just to close out, we're in 2022. We've come through some of the most crazy times that we've ever faced. I've been challenged. You've been challenged. We've all been challenged, and some people have been broken through this situation as well, and they're going to have to rebuild themselves. And we're all working together to build a greater reset, not a great reset, a greater reset, a greater awakening. People need to be their own hero. They can't leave it up to Gerard. They can't leave it up to a president of the USA or whoever else. What would you say to people that need to now take responsibility and go on their own hero's journey? If you can talk to that person, and then we'll invite you to share what you're up to.
Yeah, I would say stop playing so fucking small. Stop waiting. Stop telling yourself you can't, you won't, now's not the right time, and start taking action. There's never going to be the perfect time. If anything, now is the perfect time. This is a moment in history that you do not want to get left behind. It's time to adapt or die. And you are the answer. You are the chosen one. You are the one that is going to create the shift that is needed in your family, in your lineage, and for the world. But only you can choose to actually be the torchbearer. Only you can choose to take the step forward into the uncertainty, to take the leap, to jump, to actually believe in yourself and have unwavering faith, knowing that you don't know it all and you don't have the perfect plan, but you trust that it's in God's plan, and that the plan will reveal itself as long as you take a step forward and trust the process by believing in yourself and following your heart and what is in integrity, knowing internally that you are ready to play a much bigger game. And so, yes, I'm sure it's going to be scary. And like, if you're anything like me, sometimes expansion can be a scary thing. But ultimately, on the other side of that fear is quantum fucking growth. And so you can either continue life settling for mediocre and make that dash be just, he was a good guy. She was great and all, but didn't really play to her full potential, or his full potential. Or you can go all out, and when you're on that deathbed, have no regrets, because you, during this time, actually went for it and did what was necessary. And the resources universe will bring them to you, but you have to commit. And committing doesn't mean starting and stopping and quitting. Committing means seeing it through every step of the way, every single day, playing the long game. So the choice is yours.
And where can people find you? Leaders Create Leaders.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic show. Your masterminds.
Yeah, go to leaderscreateleaders.com. Again, leaderscreateleaders.com. If you're interested in our mastermind, you can also send me a direct message on Instagram. That's what I use on a daily basis, at Gerard Adams. That's GerardAdams. And you can also check out my podcast, Leaders Create Leaders, on all platforms. And thank you, Craig, so much for having me on the show. I can't wait to hear from some of the tribe.